Good day, everybody. What an incredible day for the world. I've been monitoring the news, watching news, and talking to sources all day, and I feel a little bit overwhelmed because bigness is occurring, historic things are occurring, but really understanding them and trying to separate the real from the imagined, the bluster and hype from the hard and real is a challenge. But it's been an emotional day in Israel, in the United States, around the world. The president spoke this morning in Israel and then this afternoon, American time, in Egypt. Both extraordinary events, and both events, no matter what you think about Donald Trump, I feel confident in saying only Donald Trump of all American presidents could possibly have done the way he did them. So we're going to talk about the day and try to project forward as we usually do to say what's this where's all this headed beyond the extraordinary things we saw today. I will say there's no huge news today. Really, probably the biggest news maybe is unrelated to Israel. President Zelensky is coming to the United States on Friday to meet with President Trump. But in the context of what happened in Israel, in the context of what happened in Egypt, there's tons of interesting things that happened. We'll show you some of that. But there's no major news. The deal is holding. 20 hostages have been released. There's still questions about the remains of some of the others. But really, it's a lot about pondering the meaning of what happened, and we will do that. John Podhoretz will be here, editor of commentary. AJ Edelman, the Israeli Olympic athlete and just extraordinary commentator and thinker and human about all these issues. Very glad that they'll be here in a bit. And as always, we want your questions and comments. If you're here on the two-way platform, you want to get in on the conversation, ask you to raise your hand, and we'll get to you. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about the day. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't put your hands up and don't put smack in the chat of all days. Shouldn't even have to tell you not to put smack in the chat. It says that right on my sleeve here, no smack in the chat. So I'm constantly reminded of that. But feel free to write things in there that reflect peace, love, and understanding. I'll just say again, if you do not like Donald Trump, today's the day maybe to think about how he did this, because I'm still working on my thoughts about all of this. I've got some of them down, but I think it's pretty clear that a lot of what led to what happened, which world leaders uniformly are giving credit to President Trump and his team, is a reflection of Donald Trump's style of governance, of leadership, of being unorthodox. And you may think it doesn't work in every case, and you may think he didn't succeed in this case because of it. But I think you'd be wrong on that last point. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that with John, who's no big fan of Donald Trump, and AJ in a minute. But first, excuse me, I need a doctor, but not for the reason you're thinking. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, owner of the Los Angeles Times, is going to join us. You've heard me make this point before, both here and on Next Up. The nation doesn't have very many news organizations with economy of scale, with reach, with history and tradition to do what news organizations need to do. Two main things: hold powerful interests accountable to the public interest and explain the world in a compelling way to its audience. And I've said before, I doubt anybody's going to start a new one that reaches that scale. You've heard me say this about CBS News and how pleased I am that Barry Weiss is going to try to restore CBS to those two great traditions: hold all powerful interests accountable to the public interest and tell the great stories of our time. And in the case of Los Angeles Times, we have one of the maybe a dozen, if you wanted to be generous, organizations that historically and currently have the capacity to do those important things at scale. Smaller independent media can do those things in a small way, but to be global in the reach and distribution, to do the kind of things that big organizations can do to hold powerful interests accountable to public interests, we don't have very many. And one of the few that we have is Los Angeles Times. So joining us now to talk about the news of the day, but also about the important developments with the Los Angeles Times and its growth as a brand, is my co-host on Cancer Decoded, and someone who hasn't been with us in a while, so couldn't be more excited to have Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong back. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Mark. What a wonderful and exciting day it is.
Yeah, you were in the Middle East not too long ago with President Trump. People may have seen you on his trip. So talk about the through line from that trip you were on with a number of American leaders in all sorts of realms to today. What did you see on that trip that again, where you see the continuity to what's happened now.
Well, I was with him during the time when we went to Saudi Arabia when it was with MBS, and then we had the state dinner, and then from there we went to Qatar, and we met. I was with him when he was the emir. I got to tell you, in that audience during that time when he gave the address in Saudi Arabia, and he mentioned what he was going to do for Syria, even, which was again non-conventional. There was such an amazing positive response. So what you said in your opening here is completely correct. Here is a president that is not only unconventional, but really acts like a person who understands the world and truly strategically, like a businessman who has actually made a payroll and runs a payroll and understands how the world really works, made this happen. I mean, for years and years, this conflict is happening in the Middle East. There's real opportunity now to really have peace. So what he did then was actually, when we were talking to His Royal Highness MBS, was sharing how both the interests of the US and the Middle East were aligned. And there was this big conversation, and it's on Fox. Somebody actually picked it up, and it's on our X. And the same thing when we did in Qatar. So he truly is a man of peace. It may be difficult for left or right to really come together to understand that. But what he's done today is good for the world, good for humanity, good for the country.
What would you say to the people? I hear some people say the reason Donald Trump did this was the time was ripe, that this couldn't happen under President Biden or President Obama because the time wasn't ripe, as opposed to what President Trump's team says, which is he made the time right. How would you weigh in on that debate?
I would fully agree. I mean, it's not hidden that I didn't approve of the action or inaction during the President Biden's administration, including Kamala Harris, and how we actually pulled out of Afghanistan and the absence of planning, etc., which really, in fact, reflected a non-real world knowledge of how the real world works and the issue of logistics and planning and everything. He made it right. He made the environment right by that trip. That trip was to Riyadh and to Doha, together with bringing together the Middle East leaders. He actually made the environment right. The way he sort of pushed both Israel and pushed the Hamas on both sides, he made that right. And I think it's really the art of strategically not negotiating, but putting them in the position that really this is in the interest of all. And I think a businessman understands how to do that kind of deal versus a career politician who really lives in a different kind of bubble, if I may say.
Yeah. So I want to pick up on that theme and transition to talking about you and what you're doing with the paper, or the brand of, I should say, the LA Times Media Group. So I grew up in Washington, D.C. My father worked in the government. I went to an Ivy League school. I've never lived anywhere but Boston, Washington, and New York. And despite that, I understand the age we're in, I believe. We're not in the age where we should trust the experts. Career diplomats never did what Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, not career diplomats, not people who grew up steeped in, the Council on Foreign Relations. They never did what those guys did. And then when I hear people criticize you or Barry Weiss, and they say, well, these aren't the standard types of people who have run media organizations before, so they're not experts, they couldn't do a good job. And I say, well, let's look at the record of the experts. They didn't do a good job. So now we turn to you and what you're doing with the LA Times Media Group. So exciting to me because you're bringing a perspective of someone, successful business person, iconoclast, who believes in quality journalism, but also believes that the old models aren't working. So tell people what you're doing in terms of content, and then tell people about what you're doing in terms of growing the paper's resources through investment. So start with the content. What is the LA Times Media Group doing now, not just with what people think about the newspaper, but with the overall brand and content range?
So, look, I think it was good that I didn't come from the old world of content, what you consider real journalism is all about, because content means different things to different people. And that's what the first thing I recognized when we bought the paper. In order to get content, there could be content, what you're talking about, what we're talking about right now, very important global journalism with integrity and just the facts. But there's also content of opinions, meaning people can say, and you said don't put smack on the X, and the ability for people to actually voice their, truly what they believe, I call that voices. But then you have this generation that actually gets their news on X, Facebook, TikTok, who wants to be engaged. What is their content as they scroll through their mobile phone? The mobile phone has changed the world. So in 2018, I recognized very early on that the what they call the content management systems, the software, was archaic in newspapers. That we will become and are now almost dinosaurs. That media currently, ABC and CBS, the current broadcast media, will become dinosaurs unless they adopt to the new way of engagement using delivering content in a physical way in which you want to absorb the content, whether it be on iPad, mobile phone, TV, broadcast, podcast, music, events, physical. And I realized that the infrastructure of the current newspapers, including New York Times, Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times in 2018-19, didn't have that. So for 7 years, we've built that infrastructure.
And now, when you think about everything you're doing, it's the serious news of the again, what I call the newspaper, but it's also esports. It's also a range of content around people, all as you said, what different people are interested in. Now, explain to people the step you're taking in terms of an investment opportunity for folks who want to be part of owning a new style of news and information and entertainment organization.
So let me tell you what we've quietly been very methodically doing when we launched the what I call the app, the Los Angeles Times app, which has now become the Los Angeles Times Media Group app. You could press a button and be on Malibu Beach watching the ocean in real time. You could press a button and actually see the planes landing at LAX. You could press a button and you could be in Hollywood during last night. This weekend I was at Food Bowl, one of the biggest events. We will be live streaming that. The opportunity for us to be at the book festival, which is the largest book festival in the country that we run, and that's an event. You could be in the podcast room like we are doing now, and you could hear that on the button. In order to make all of that available in real time, I mean real time, you needed a content management system, which we call Graphene. So I built that infrastructure. We built that infrastructure. And what we're doing now is streaming. Right next door to me is an LA Times studio where we're doing a travel show right now. So all of this content independent separately from the integrity of news. And as you said, looking at today's events, we are now becoming a very, very small in terms of global community. Everything that's happening in geopolitics affects all of us, all the way down to United States, all the way down to California. So we need to get some international content as well as some US-based content at the journalism level. So what we've done, in short, we've taken 4 brands: the Los Angeles Times Newsroom, Los Angeles Times Studio that actually runs events, that runs podcasts, that runs live streaming, runs cameras, the NAN Studio, which is this most sophisticated LED volume that has TV quality, movie quality production for advertisers. And then finally, gaming, all the way to esports gaming, from crossword puzzles to interactive gaming, where both events as well as the actual gaming itself. And then finally, we become a publisher, not just of the news, but a publisher of e-games, a publisher of journals down the road. So this is where, this is truly, in my mind, a whole media platform, a media group. And we've made these investments, almost $1 billion, this $750 million of investment over 7 years for this day. But a lot of these technologies are now available even on your app as we speak today. The other thing that we wanted to do, Mark, was to make sure that we can democratize this. We wanted people to be able to invest and be part owners of this. So we've launched join.latimes.com. If you go to join.latimes.com, you will see the ability for somebody to invest today, even with a credit card, and be part of this as we lead our way to a public offering.
So when people go to the website and invest, what are they investing in? Are they investing in journalism or a media company? Are they helping the public by doing this? How would you describe the opportunity for people in terms of both financial and possibility, but also in terms of public service, public helping the public interest?
Yeah, we didn't want this to be a philanthropic investment. We think the LA Times Media Group is a business, and it's a new platform. It's a studio. It's a news studio. It's an entertainment studio. It's a music studio. So we wanted the public to have the ability to take part of this in some form of ownership. And you know, there's this thing called Reg A where when we go public, you can invest as small as $50 or $5. So as opposed to having just large private equity and institutions buy big blocks, the opportunity really is to truly democratize and everybody feel they're part ownership and also part of the growth as we grow this platform.
Right. So again, folks, just to conclude this, even on this huge news day, we want to take the opportunity to let you know, here's an opportunity to be part of what we all know is necessary, to invest in a big new idea about media, entertainment, accountability, information. What we all know we need, quality companies that are going to try to make sense of the world for us. We all know we need them. We all know we need some big ones, not just independents. Here's an opportunity to be part of that. So, Doctor, couldn't be more grateful to you for making time to explain it. Give people the URL one more time.
So it's join.latimes.com.
Yeah. And again, if you believe, as I do, in the future of news and information and people who are quality owners, become a quality owner, become the owner, a part owner of something that's aspiring to do what so few places are still trying to do: make sense of the world, entertain, inform, explain in a way that requires some scale. Look forward to having you back and keeping talking about it. And again, I every time I read any of the information you guys are putting out, I'm so excited about how new this is. Digital first, video first, information first, quality first. We need more of it, and I'm grateful to you for being a leader in this area.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. All right. We're going to, Dr. Pat will be back with all sorts of things here, but grateful to him for coming on today. So in a moment, John Podhoretz and AJ will be here, and we'll talk about the news of the day. If you want to be part of the conversation, please raise your hand. We'll get to you in a minute. And going to show you some of what the president did. Although I have to say, just as was true in the morning meeting, there's 100 things we could show you. The president talked about 100 things, he said, and some of them are historic and right on this achievement that is really quite something. And some of it's hilarious. Some of the things he said today were just hilarious, and I like them both. So hopefully we'll have time to show you some of both of those. Before we go, though, a message from one of our sponsors tonight, and that's Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth, I went to the Packers game, first time to Lambeau Field this weekend, and my friend who came with me had bought his first pair of Cozy Earth pants based on the recommendations I've made here, and he wore them to the game. He hadn't worn them. He brought them with him to Green Bay, and he took them out and he put them on for the game. And basically, it was a big mistake on my part because he didn't talk much about the game. He just talked about the pants. Cozy Earth pants. He said, "These, Mark, you undersold these. So comfortable." Same with the sheets. Now he's going to go buy the sheets because he said, if their pants are this good, I have to assume, Mark, you're right about the sheets. Comfortable stuff. It's comfortable. Keeps you cool when you want to be cool. Keeps you warm when it's cold. It wasn't cold at the game, by the way. It was warm. Also, the Bubble Cuddle Blanket, also available now. All of these things can be purchased on the Cozy Earth website, cozyearth.com, for 20% off if you use the code TWOWAY. Go to cozyearth.com. Buy the pants, the sheets, the blankets. It's all good stuff because home isn't just where you live, it's how you feel. Let's go home with Cozy Earth, all available now. All right. On this historic day, we have two students of history with us. Couldn't be more pleased to bring in AJ Edelman and John Podhoretz, who have watched these events with fascination and I hope some delight. John first. John, welcome in. John, of course.
Thanks, Mark.
John, of course, runs a little magazine we call Commentary and does a little podcast called the Commentary Podcast. And is not the biggest fan historically of Donald Trump, I'd say. And yet, John just started at 90,000 feet. How do you feel about the events of the day?
I think they're epic. I think they're world historic. My skepticism about Donald Trump, which began in 2015, real world, it's a real world test of what somebody does with leadership, and what he has done in this case with the leadership on this extraordinarily intractable and difficult matter is world changing. You mentioned earlier in the show that you grew up. Your father was my father was obviously an intellectual, ran magazines. Your father was a senior foreign policy official, and just as there has to be new media now to deal with the changes in the way the world works, diplomacy, foreign policy, the practice of foreign relations have all needed to undergo a gigantic renovation and change in the wake of the Cold War's end and the change in bipolarity and all of that. And we have very much in the 30 years since the end of the Cold War been living in the model of how foreign policy was always conducted, and Trump came along and has shattered it completely. And we can now see in what has happened here how, on the one hand, that could look very destructive if it doesn't get you anywhere. And on the other hand, the possibility for creative change and deeply creative solutions to problems that seemed insoluble, how that can happen based, I think, on a very, very plain old model, which is deterrence. What happened was Israel and the United States have used not only force, but the threat of force to force people to the table, to bend them to our will for the purpose of enhancing world order and peace. And that is an accomplishment of such scale that obviously it's fragile, things could go sideways. But in its early opening moves here, it's like Secretariat jumping out 31 lengths and taking the Belmont Stakes by. This is just a remarkable achievement.
Thank you for that, John. Welcome in. A.J. Edelman is an Olympic athlete and a genius, but has such a big heart. And I want you to address the kind of macro historical, but first I want you to share, because again, I so appreciate your heart, how you feel watching the scenes of the hostages coming home.
I think that it's very hard to put into context what the feeling is, because it hasn't happened before. So I think that the closest, Israel has never had a situation in which you have just mass amounts of hostages being held for such a long time, and resulting in a massive, for Israel, it's a massive undertaking the last couple of years. I think it's just general elation that not only is this suddenly drawing or starting to come to an end, but somewhat of a bit of a punch drunk feeling at the moment, because the going no one really thought that they would be able to get all the hostages out in time, right? Yeah. Or that they'd be able to get them all in one fell swoop. The going knowledge, everyone thought that it was going to be a situation which it was a slow bleed for a very long time. And that was the only way that Hamas was going to be able to hold any sort of cards, was to slowly bleed out the hostage issue. The suddenness at which the release of 20 living and the rest who will come home is something that has caught the society off guard in a very good and proper way. I'd say that the feeling is extremely celebratory, but also incredibly dismayed. It's dismayed at there's internal reflection. How are we going to say like, what are we going to do moving forward? Israel has a social compact, a social contract with the people, with the families that are conscripted into service. That if you're that no matter who is taken and no matter what time, Israel stops at nothing to bring them home. That has resulted in some devastating consequences, particularly in this war, as to how the war is executed. So the war was executed over a long period of time, 2 years. It was executed in a manner that was house by house. It was going door to door, resulting in a lot of casualties for which a lot of other militaries would not have taken. A lot of militaries would have just used the air superiority, turned the place immediately to rebel in the first few months, and just have tried to been done with it. This sort of door to door really wore out Israeli society. So it's very hard to contextualize, again, the joy at which they're feeling, but it's also somewhat of an exhaustion, an internal reflection. How is this going to happen in the future? Because you can't, the incentivization of hostage taking is there now. It is really enshrined into releasing. I think at one point the numbers were 70 life sentence individuals for a single hostage. It just can't continue that way because it encourages further hostage taking. So that's one. The second is there is a sense that the Middle East is realigning. And there is a small silver lining in what has gone on the last 2 years, which is if you take a look at the situation and what has occurred, there's been a radical realignment in the Middle East, both in how Israel operates, where they strike, how contained they are, as well as just the general security apparatus. So you have Lebanon somewhat more safer, with Hezbollah being literally castrated. You have Syria looking like it's becoming a bit of a safer option there. The Houthis are now a little bit more in check. Hamas has been absolutely gutted from top to bottom. Israel made it very clear that they were going to strike Hamas targets even in Qatar if things didn't turn out. 2 years ago, all of these would have been considered impossibilities, right? Taking apart Hezbollah, which was viewed as a huge terror organization, far more advanced than Hamas, well armed, well funded, backed by Iran, a whole foothold in the country of Lebanon. I think so. There's just a lot of feelings today. First and foremost will be the joy. It's still the Jewish holiday, and they're going to finish that out. But it's soon to give way, and I think it's starting to feel like it's soon to give way to a reflection here of what happens in the future should this happen, because it is not unlikely that this sort of event or episode will be retried again by various groups.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I think your point is extremely well taken, but the hostage taking has been a tool in the Palestinian toolbox for half a century. I mean, remember, the Munich athletes were taken hostage, and then the idea was to take them hostage, not to kill them. They were going to try to use them as bargaining chips, and obviously Entebbe, a plane load of Israelis was taken off. This is a 50-year practice, asymmetrical warfare, using your tools to hand. So go after civilians who are unarmed in places where they are not protected. See what you can do to get them, or individual soldiers who pop up in places they shouldn't be, or are exposed, as was the case with Gilad Shalit and some others, Ron Arad. What's happened here is that what you want, AJ, and that Jonathan Conricus, the military spokesman who was the spokesman at the beginning of the war, has brought up, is what Israel needs to do is to say, this will never happen again. And we are creating a new military doctrine that ensures that anybody who thinks that they can use this technique will be met with overwhelming force. So don't even try it. But that announcement of that doctrine, which I think will happen almost explicitly, would have no teeth had it not been for the last 2 years. What matters is that after the hostages were taken, Israel went to war, hasn't killed off Hamas. It has defeated Hamas in a war, and it has gotten back the lion's share of the people who were taken hostage. And therefore, they have shown that they are willing to spend 2 years in the face of unbelievable pressure from world elite public opinion, about and slanderous accusations of commissions of genocide and deliberate starvation and the murder of children and the blowing up of hospitals, all of which were lies, but nonetheless retailed very successfully. They put their heads down. Bibi, pretty much everybody who doesn't like Bibi, it doesn't matter. The country put its head down and said, we are going through this. And remember, on October 8th, Bibi said, 2023 said, we are going to destroy Hamas and we're going to get all the hostages back. And we all said, I mean, you got to say that. He has to say that. Obviously, he has to say all the hostages are going to get back and we're going to destroy Hamas. A, he probably can't really destroy Hamas. And B, he's not really going to get all the hostages back or any of the hostages back. He hasn't gotten all the hostages back. Okay, they're not all back. I don't know how many have been killed. Can't remember what the number is, 80 or something like that. But the idea was he was creating unreachable goals. But he had to do it because this is what the country needed to hear. And goddamn if he didn't do it. And the country wasn't behind him. 70% of Israel said they would accept a unilateral ceasefire and an ending of the war to get the hostages back. And all of world opinion was against him and said that Israel had somehow turned into the aggressor in a war that it did not start. And the only way out for him was through. The only way out for Israel was through. And the amount of pressure, also from the Biden people in 2024, the amount of pressure that he had to withstand and that the Israeli military had to withstand and that the Israeli strategic approach to this war had to withstand, I don't know that anybody on earth would have been able to withstand it. I mean, you just think about what it's like to get criticized if you're, you write something and people say something nasty about it on Twitter and then you get all upset. Like, this is a man with the entire body of world elite opinion coming at him, wanting to arrest him. Israelis are trying to throw him in jail. People are calling him a genocider. The general approach for somebody like Bibi is to sue for peace. Is to say, no, I'm an okay guy. Really, I am. I just want peace just like everybody else. Let's try to make peace. To be fair, Israel would say then, okay, Biden has a ceasefire plan. We'll accept the contours of it. That's what they said in June 2024. Hamas said no. Hamas said no 8 times to American proposed plans that involved ceasefire first and then some hostages back with a negotiation for more levels of ceasefire. He just kept at it, and by doing so, and in the course of that time, hitting Hezbollah, hitting Iran, hitting the Houthis, hitting Qatar, all of that, the Syrian regime collapsing, all of this, the deterrence that he has established so that who's going to take a hostage? Do you want to face this military that has just spent 2 years showing what it is willing, capable, and able to do? If you take one of its people, the entire country is like, you get that guy back. I don't care what it takes. It's an amazing accomplishment for a country that has spent half a century with the beast on its back of being the one place on earth where where enemies routinely take citizens hostage as a means of asymmetrical war.
So agree on many points. I'll disagree on the final point about the legitimacy as a tactic in future military conflicts between whoever pops up on the Palestinian side versus Israel in terms of taking hostages. It should be noted that this was possible at the end of the day with a very understanding U.S. administration on the back end. And
vital, without question.
Absolutely key. Israel would absolutely never have struck Qatar if Harris was president. I'm quite sure of it. I do think that many of the moves that we've seen since Trump took office, or at least since it became clear that Biden was not going to win re-election, that includes the beeper stuff and things that went on there, it softened the ground. And so in the future, if you have a more hostile U.S. administration, let's say that the economy tanks, which is very, very possible in the next few years that the economy just, it's a huge bubble right now. The economy tanks, and the prevailing wisdom is that the party in power gets punished when the economy tanks. So you have an AOC type presidency. Very possible. She's very popular in the primaries, or in, would be very, very popular in the primaries. I do think that the hostage taking tactic is not off the table.
It's never off the table. That's
right,
why it's in the Torah. It's
no,
literally in the foundational documents of the Jewish people.
For
that
sure,
Jews are uniquely susceptible to having their populations taken captive, and that they're supposed to ransom for them.
Completely agree. But this is sort of one of those situations where it's like someone misses a goal and it's like 2 more inches to the left, they would have made the goal, but 2 more inches to the right, it would have been wide, right? Really wide. This could have gone either way. Hamas came incredibly close to getting what it wanted. Right? It really nearly held out. If it had gotten the other administration, it probably could have held out. It got a bunch of recognitions from states that don't matter on the world stage in terms of what they wanted. But Hamas initially got a lot of what they wanted. And when you say, like, do they go through the whole rigmarole of dealing with an army that's going to do this? Israel was internally really fractured over these last couple of years in terms of it continuing, and things change all the time on the ground. If I'm a group like Hamas or whoever replaces Hamas, and I know that every single time I start a war, my domestic approval goes through the roof, right? Like it's the number one way to shore up your political bona fides is to attack Israel, is to take some hostages, attack Israel, get some life sentence people, released from jail. I still think that if Bibi goes, or when Bibi goes, and you have a softer prime minister, you have a softer U.S. administration, this hostage taking is going to go right back on the table in a serious way. So Israel needs to have some sort of internal. I think there needs to be an internal referendum. There needs to actually be something binding that doesn't make it a leadership top brass sort of decision. Of the country itself needs to state this is no longer the policy. It cannot be a military. It cannot be a military decision, because the military is always at the whim of a civilian government, and those governments are always at the whim of the political pressure. And with a more hardline U.S. administration against Israel, I think that pressure really would have won out at some point.
AJ, since you are, of course, a good day school kid, so you know this well. This thing that I mentioned, the ransoming of the captives, that this is an ancient Jewish practice, that we are obliged to ransom captives, and that this is a tool that can be used against Jews uniquely in some ways, let's say. What do you do if you have a policy that says you ransom captives? Well, you have you have 2 ways around it. One of which is that you do it, and partially it was done this time, right? I mean, the deal is 2,000 Palestinians are coming out of Israeli jails for these 28 living hostages. The other is you rescue them, right? That was the other trick approach, was Entebbe. You try to rescue them. Well, the problem here was that Israel's best shot at rescue ended in death. That in September, when the 6 hostages, including Hersh Goldberg Poland, were 5 feet away from the Israelis in the tunnels, and their captors shot them in the back or shot them in the head, rather than having them be rescued. And that was when the rescue efforts stopped. So I'm in complete agreement with you that Israel is very torn on this. There are religious opinions, binding shilas from the senior Sephardic rabbi, people studying the issue who say you are allowed to do this, but you can't do that. And I think as a matter of policy, Israel, the country of Israel, the nation of Israel as a nation and not as a captive, as a peoples in the Middle East, is going to have to make as a national policy that hostages are not to be ransomed.
Right.
It's too dangerous. 900 Israelis died to rescue 250 Israelis, not all of whom got rescued. Those 900 people, those are young soldiers mostly. They are conscripts. Is that a fair trade? I don't think anybody in Israel says it's not, because also there was this larger military mission. But this is going to be a major issue going forward. And yes, but they also have teeth now, and they have the threat, and they have enough. They now have a reason why the Palestinian Authority is not going to go running around taking hostages, which to be fair, it doesn't do. But
I've got 25 questions to the two of you. I'm not going to ask any of them because I want to get to the community, but I love the conversation because you brought to it a level of sophistication and knowledge and passion that I think we call them conversations like no other. And I just so appreciate how thoughtful you both were. So I'm going to squelch my 25 questions and go to the community. And if you've got a question, please raise your hand. Just one bit of business before we do that, which is another sponsor. Fast Growing Trees. It is planting season here in the fall. Many trees actually grow better when you plant them in the fall. Fast Growing Trees is incredible. If you go to a nursery in your neighborhood, at least in my experience, you don't get the kind of service and attention and specific advice that you get from the folks at Fast Growing Trees, who will look at where you live, whether you want to plant and grow inside or outside. Fast Growing Trees right now, if you want to get a tree or two or three. I love mine. Shows up in a big giant box. Pretty exciting to unwrap a tree. I'd never done that before. And the offer for a limited time now is to go to fastgrowingtrees.com, use the code two-way, and for a limited time, you get 15% off your order. So if you want to be planting or growing inside or out, go to fastgrowingtrees.com. You'll give them a little bit of information about what you have in mind, and they'll make recommendations about trees, and they'll show up right at your door in a big box. So go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the promo code two-way if you want to add a tree or two or three to your life. All right, here we go to questions. And again, I'm squelching mine, so you can thank me later because I'm going to go to your questions and not mine. Here's Turner. Turner, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind for AJ and for John.
Hi, guys. What a great day. I'm sure for people that are Jewish, it's an amazing feeling to have these hostages back. Can't even imagine. I guess my question is, I saw this report from the Washington Post that talked about the coordination between all the regional Arab states. I'm just wondering how much of this played into this and going forward, if this is a good indicator of how things will be.
You remember
Questions?
the line that we heard Osama bin Laden use to explain why it was he thought America was a soft target and an easy target, which is that people will back the strong horse. So I think you have to look at what happened over the last 2 weeks. It's hard to say who the strong horse is. Obviously, Trump is the strong horse in this negotiation. He's the head of the free world. He's the head of the most powerful nation on earth. He had just shown people that he was willing to participate in a military strike to destroy the Iranian nuclear program. He was not hostile to the use of force in other ways in the Middle East. He's the strong horse, but Israel is also the strong horse. And if Osama bin Laden reflected in that barbaric notion, some version of a kind of conventional wisdom in the world from which he emerged, then the Trump peace plan depended upon him and Israel looking like the smart move was to back him. That, yeah, they gave Hamas a shot. Qatar gave it a lot of money. Qatar spent $10 billion here trying to change American public opinion and turn it hostile with some success and all of that. But in the end, you go with the strong horse, and that's the American-Israeli alliance. And without that, as AJ says, I mean, if it were the Harris administration, who knows where we would be right now. Jake Sullivan, who was Biden's national security advisor 2 months ago, called for an American arms embargo to Israel, in part because his wife is a congressman from a liberal district in New Hampshire, and he wants to help her win her second election in 2026. But the national security advisor, former national security advisor, endorsing an arms embargo against Israel in a war of self-defense. So that wouldn't have been the strong horse in September 2025. So yes, history is contingent. It really matters what voters do and what elected officials choose to read the message of the voters. These aren't people who read lessons from the public. They read like, what is safe for me? What's the best play for me? Trump likes to be flattered. He'll make deals with you. I'm going to flatter him. I'm going to go along with what he says, because there's no value in sticking with Hamas. They're not going to win anything. And they just have these people in horrible conditions and dungeons. That's all they got. That's not much to
AJ,
balance out.
Yep.
thoughts on what Turner asked?
Oh,
John said.
I mean, I basically, I don't, I think people have better, like people have additional questions, and I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is, you
All
know, it's a
good.
good question, but
Yeah.
I don't want to
Okay.
waste
All
time.
good. Turner, thank you, man. Grateful to you. Okay. Rick, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for AJ and for John.
I am in Charleston, South Carolina, and can't tell you what an honor this is on such a glorious day to talk to the three of you. And Mark, if I could give Mr. Podhoretz a quick plug, in addition to the fabulous commentary podcast, he's also co-host to Glop Culture, which they keep threatening to quit doing, and I hope they never do. It's the
Thank you very much. Thank you.
one of the funniest things on
That's my silly podcast.
It's fantastic. And
John has 7 talents that are more impressive than his day job.
But Mark, you have like 7 podcasts, so that's yeah. I only have the one anyway. But thank you so much.
You have to be within 5 years of my age, which is 64, to listen to it. So that's a pre-warning. So I have so many questions, but and I hope this doesn't sound crass, but for the last 2 years, we've all heard about the innocents in Gaza, and leaving children aside, children are always innocent, no matter where they are. But the backing inside Gaza for Hamas is at what level, and will that change with this turn of events?
Yeah, brilliant question, AJ.
So every single poll taken in many years puts Hamas way ahead of any other Palestinian leadership option. The in American terms, they would have a supermajority of approval. It is rare to see this sort of approval for a government that you see for Hamas, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. There's a reason, though it was people tried to explain it away with, Hamas is brutal and their tactics are brutal. Yet those are the very same people who oppose a war to depose Hamas, right? So, the reality is that you did not see, even in the final week, when Hamas was presented with this pretty comprehensive plan of basically unlimited funds to rebuild. We'll just release the hostages, a caretaker Arab-led coalition government with Israel not involved. You still had many days in which Hamas was essentially negotiating its multi-million-dollar exit packages. Right, the war continued to go on, and you didn't have any protests in the streets for them to sign the deal. The bottom line is Hamas is very popular, and the war at the end of the day was very popular. There's an English speaking and there's an Arab speaking media side to every Palestinian government, and what you hear on the English side is not what's told on the Arab side. It's very common to say one thing that's very palatable for Western audiences and then turn around and tell yourself or your people domestically something completely the opposite. On the Arab side of things, it has been nonstop since October 7th. This is a just war. This is great. Everything we're doing is to fight the Jews. And Gaza, by and large, absolutely celebrate it. This is a war that in the end saw Hamas rise in popularity, except for a few certain points in which it just seemed to be dragging on. But Hamas is incredibly popular.
John.
We got used during the Cold War to dividing the population of a country that we were at war with from the government that we didn't like. That is to say, the peoples of the Soviet Union were deemed to be captives of a totalitarian government. Our beef was not with them. It was with the regime that if we could destroy or ruin or get out of place, we would be doing them a favor. Same thing, by the way, Bibi Netanyahu said, and Trump said, and everybody said about Iran. The mullahs, we don't have an argument with the Iranian people. Our problem is with the regime that has been in power there for 46 years and that oppresses its people, cheats on elections, hangs people to make examples of them and all of that. But that's not classically how we view countries that are at war with us or with our allies. They are complicit. The people of those countries are deemed complicit. We didn't say, oh, the poor suffering people of Germany who, have this government that is oppressive to them, or the poor suffering people of Japan who have this government that is so oppressive to them. We said this is their government. It emerges from them almost organically in some fashion. They have made war on the rest of the world, and all bets are off. I mean, the United States, Britain firebombed Dresden in response to the firebombing of London. That was that was literally, they just took out a city because 4 years earlier, the Nazis had gone after London, civilian populations in London. We bombed the Hiroshima and Nagasaki and Tokyo. Because except for this weird proviso about totalitarian regimes that take over their countries and the people in them are trying to fight them and then they get thrown in jail because they're dissidents, we accept, or the world has always accepted, that wars are conducted country to country, and the people who are citizens of that country are complicit participants in the battle that is being fought. Israel, once again, not getting any credit for it, designed a war in which, according to John Spencer, military expert, Israel took more care to contain civilian casualties in this war than any nation has ever taken care to contain such casualties, including the United States, in its fights in Iraq and Afghanistan. Gets no credit for it, doesn't want to kill kids, only wants to kill terrorists, only wants to rescue hostages, only wants to extirpate Hamas. So in the end, AJ says Hamas is popular. So Hamas is popular. So that means the people of Gaza are the spine, or they are the platform on which Hamas is standing. And only total defeat, which has not been achieved here, but we learned in World War II, was we needed the total and complete evisceration, defeat of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, to have those countries understand that the path that they had gone on, they needed to radically change and to go in an entirely opposite direction. But without the humiliation and elimination of them, that would not have been possible. So the question now is, what happens over the next 3 years, including the terms of the Trump plan, to see whether there can be some sea change in the Palestinian polis. I assume AJ is as skeptical of that as I am.
I'm afraid you were going to say that, because
I don't believe it. But
yeah, how does this not just regrow organically like any other movement would?
Because being a loser, because loss on this scale can have a transformative effect, even in a culture that sort of wants to lose or has a ready explanation for why it's unfair that it's losing, and therefore it can continue to lose because its enemy is too unjust. But you don't want to be on the losing side. That's the strong horse thing. Maybe there's some other way you can go.
So let me just add an addendum to that. So John is entirely correct that no one likes being on the losing side. And what we saw actually from Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany was that it was made very apparent that they were on the losing side. There was an element to the humiliation of loss. And a lot of people blamed World War II on the humiliation that was heaped on the Germans in World War I. There's a distinct difference. The German humiliation was left in a state that they were just completely floundering. So contrast that to post-World War II Europe, in which the US set up an economic package, essentially the Marshall Plan, to say there's a better path forward. You are on the garbage losing side. This is what the side that wins looks like. Same thing for Imperial Japan. Absolutely humiliated, right? Japan suffered a humiliation probably far worse than Germans post-World War I, because they truly believed that they were invincible. They were like how Nazis viewed themselves, the chosen race, and the emperor couldn't lose. He was a deity. they were thoroughly humiliated. But what the U.S. did in their occupation was they provided all the elements to what made America great. They provided capitalism and McDonald's and all sorts of stuff. And the Japanese
and a democratic
yes,
constitution
exactly
wrote a constitution.
And the Japanese came around and said, you know, maybe this imperialism across all of Asia and raping all of Asia, it hasn't really gotten us much, but we really have advanced in the post-World War II, and that really changed things. Now, the difference in when it comes to Gaza or when it comes to Palestinians in general is when they lose wars, they don't lose. When they lose wars, they gain, right? They have never lost a war and walked away losing, right? Even in this war, they will walk away with unlimited rebuilding funds. And so they don't experience what it's like to actually lose. You see celebrations in the streets. If this was every bit the tragedy that they actually expressed that it was on social media, you wouldn't be dancing in the streets right now. You'd be going, this is a terrible catastrophe. We probably should change. But that's not what's going to happen. It's not what's ever happened. So you see in every single prior conflict with Gaza or with the West Bank, more terror tunnels, more infrastructure, more terror comes out of it. And the reason is not that they believe that they've lost. It's that they believe that they actually have won.
I got to disagree with you just
yeah.
quickly because
the
Palestinians on the West Bank lost the war of the Second Intifada and have been largely pacific in the generation since. So
different. There is a difference. There is an active occupation, and I will say there is an active occupation.
Well, that's right.
The difference is that security is enforced.
There was an active occupation in Germany and Japan also. So that we occupied Germany and Japan for 9 years or something like that. But you're right. I'm just saying that there is a world in which the Palestinians went to war in a very similar way. The Second Intifada, 1,000 Israelis were killed in 2 years of terrorist strikes, and they went into the West Bank, slowly moving with tanks and destroyed bomb factories and entire villages that had been turned into bomb factories, and won. They won the Intifada war. They built the wall, and the West Bank does not pose as yet. Could start.
Yeah.
But John, the goal is to have an off-ramp, right? The goal is to have a future in which Israel is not necessary to occupy. And the only way to make that happen is, of course, like the occupation keeps the security situation at bay. But you have to, the only way people believe that they are on the losing side and that a better path exists forward is to thoroughly 100% defeat it. And in the Second Intifada, you still have the same political party in power that launched the Second Intifada. Arafat is still incredibly popular as a figure. I don't think they ever came out thinking like, "Wow, this is a total catastrophic defeat." It's just,
I got to tell you, I got to pull age rank on you because I was in Israel in 2001, 2, and 3. My family there, and in the middle of the Second Intifada, you would have thought that Jerusalem was going to remain a ghost city for the rest of its days, and people in Jerusalem are not afraid of people from the West Bank anymore. Yeah. And that's just the fact of it. It's a different, the atmosphere, the Palestinian Authority and the people of the West Bank have not been able to make themselves feel like a direct daily threat. And that was not true for decades. So anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Rick, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. I do one more bit of business, but want to thank you both for being here and what an incredible day to have you both with all your wisdom and knowledge and judgment and great storytelling. So thank you both, John and AJ. Very grateful to you. One more thing. We didn't play any sound of you barely for the president today, but it's incredible. I recommend you go watch it on. As I said, there's some very funny parts, some very emotional parts, and his recognition of world leaders. The world leaders very, very praising of the president. Another entity that enjoyed today was the markets. Stocks came back 14. As you know, they were down towards the end of last week, although they're still hovering near all-time highs. 14 markets today, clawed back losses. CNBC stocks clawed back more than half of Friday's rout after Trump softens China's stance. That was the other thing that happened, besides probably liking the Middle East stuff. The Dow went up 500, go to 15. Is the president over the weekend had very conciliatory remarks towards China, and here you see Dow up almost 600, S&P up 100, and Nasdaq up almost 500. So we'll follow that all week. Stocks here, brought to you by our friends at the Bonson Group. Reminder, 4 p.m. tomorrow, David Bonson and I will convene. We're going to talk a lot about AI and its effect on the economy, but you can ask David whatever you want. This is an event for two-way community members only, will not be on YouTube. Join us. Go to tway.tv/TBG, the Bonson Group, to sign up for the event I'm doing with David tomorrow for Eastern time, as well, Tuesday, as well as to sign up for David's newsletter, The Dividend Cafe. I'll be back tomorrow 9 a.m. Eastern time with Sean and Dan for the morning meeting, and this show will be on again 6 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday. Very grateful to you for being part of the two-way community. Very grateful to our two guests. Just so smart, and I just love sitting back and listening to AJ and John. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.